Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing well. America's first defeat, Northwest Frontier. This is gonna be fun. This is epic history. I'm glad you're here. This is gonna be a fun one. Yeah, hit that like button. Let's jump into it, shall we? There you go.
11 years have passed since the United States of America declared their independence from the British Empire. But for the Americans, building a new nation is proving a formidable challenge. The infant republic is mired in debt, as well as political and economic turmoil. Veterans of the War of Independence, unpaid and desperate, mount an insurrection, Shays' Rebellion. The new...
Yeah, not really talked about a lot, even in American, schools. But it's really hard to kind of do everything in a 7 to 8 month period of learning when there's so much. But that's why independent learning is just so important. But yeah, Shays' Rebellion, the rebellion, because as many empires and countries have, you have promises made to soldiers to complete a crazy, absurdly mountainous task, which was the Revolutionary War in this case. And yeah, there's upset people. They didn't get what they needed.
The federal government survives this crisis, but it is hamstrung by the Articles of Confederation, the country's first constitution, which severely limits its power. So, later that year, lawmakers gather in Philadelphia to draft a new U.S. Constitution with much stronger powers for the executive. Meanwhile, in America's newly proclaimed Northwest Territory, another crisis is brewing.
So basically, Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio.
In theory, this vast region has been ceded to the United States by the British following the Revolutionary War. It stretches from the Appalachian Mountains in the east to the Mississippi River in the west, and from the Great Lakes in the north to the Ohio River in the south.
Lot of territory.
It was 300,000 square miles of untamed land, abundant in natural resources, and as far as the U.S. is concerned, ripe for expansion. The federal government plans to sell the land to settlers to pay off its enormous debts from the Revolutionary War, about $40 million in all.
Which, yeah, $65 billion today.
There is no shortage of demand. Thousands of settlers are eager to travel west, to build new farms and towns, and start new lives on the frontier. But there is a problem.
Oh, we're about to talk about the Native Americans that are in this area, aren't we?
Not only have thousands of settlers already crossed illegally into the Northwest Territory, the Native American tribes who already live there will bitterly resist any invasion of their ancestral homeland.
Yeah, Illinois, like the Illinois tribe or nation, the Lenape, the Seneca, which was part of the Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy, the Wyandot, the Miami, Ohio, the Potawatomi, Odawa, and Shawnee.
The United States is stumbling into a war of conquest, a war for which it's badly unprepared, against an enemy it woefully underestimates.
I forget who sold them arms. Probably us, US. We see your intentions. It is clear that your design is to take our country from us. Oh god, we're not going to be able to pronounce this, but we're going to try. Kiki Wepalethi. Not bad.
European settlers had been encroaching into Native American land for nearly 200 years. The violence was endemic. some eastern tribes had been virtually annihilated. And the War of Independence, in which most Native Americans backed the British, saw intense fighting across the frontier. Warriors from tribes such as the Miami, Shawnee, and Lenape, also known as the Delaware, targeted U.S. settlements along the Ohio River, hoping to drive away the intruders. Local militia companies, part-time settler soldiers, responded with reprisal raids. One notorious incident occurred in 1782 at Hutton. Here, Pennsylvania militiamen massacred 96 unresisting Lenape Christian converts, men, women, and children. Native American raids could be equally brutal. There were hundreds of victims on both sides, a cycle of violence that continued year after year.
It's usually how it is too, a cycle of violence. Somebody has a problem, they it's like to this day, like in terms of like gang warfare. Someone has a problem, someone fights. Someone has a problem with that person fighting, they get revenge. It goes back and forth.
But now, the U.S. government is determined to impose orderly and safe settlement of the region. And crucially, to begin selling the land to settlers, corporations, and speculators. Since independence, the U.S. government has imposed a series of one-sided treaties on the Native Americans, claiming their land by right of conquest, and using bribes, threats, and violence to get its way. Congress now goes a step further, formally establishing the Northwest Territory with clear rules for its surveying and settlement. Under the leadership of Mohawk Chief Joseph Brant, the tribes have organized themselves into the Northwestern Confederacy.
The Iroquois Confederacy.
They reject and denounce the U.S. treaties.
Right? Or is it something different? I know the Mohawk was kind of on the bottom part of this.
The new plans for settlement. These tribes are determined to hold the line of U.S. settlement at the Ohio River, and will fight to do so.
Okay, so it's a different confederacy than the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay.
With violence flaring across the Northwest Territory, it will fall to America's first president, George Washington, to find a solution to the crisis.
The government of the United States are determined that their administration of Indian affairs shall be directed entirely by the great principles of justice and humanity.
George Washington, inaugurated as the first president of the United States in April 1789, faces many daunting challenges in his first term. High among them, the national debt and the factions forming within his own cabinet. Now, the
Federalist, anti-federalist.
escalating crisis in the Northwest Territory joins the list. Washington declares his wish to deal with Native Americans honorably and fairly. Yet, at the same time, he will allow nothing to stand in the way of the Republic's security or expansion. He's also being lobbied by a powerful association of land speculators, including his own Secretary of War, Henry Knox, who are demanding action. Their concern is that the violence in the Northwest Territory will harm their investments. In 1789, a final attempt is made to persuade the tribes to sign away their land. But negotiations at Fort Harmar are boycotted by the most powerful tribes.
Wow. So it's not going to be so easy.
And so, In the summer of 1790, Washington authorizes military action. He orders the U.S. Army to launch a punitive expedition, a show of power to deter further attacks by Native Americans on U.S. settlers. It is an order for an invasion. Command of the expedition falls to Brevet Brigadier General Josiah Harmar, the nation's most senior Army officer. He is a distinguished Revolutionary War veteran who'd served with Washington at Valley Forge. But Harmar is also rumored to be a hard drinker and insists his troops follow the European model of war, relying on drill and close order formations which are completely unsuited to frontier warfare.
Yeah, it's like guerrilla warfare out here.
The forces at his disposal are extremely limited. The victorious Continental Army, which had defeated the British, has long been disbanded. In its place, Congress has authorized the formation of a single infantry regiment, around 700 men. So the bulk of Harmar's expedition will be made up of militiamen from Kentucky and Pennsylvania. Few of these were experienced frontiersmen. Rather, they're often those who lack the wits or wealth to avoid militia service. Many are old or very young, with little training and no experience of the woods.
Doesn't sound like this is being set up in the best way.
A stark contrast to the enemy they'd soon come up against.
Tis probable the Indians will fight us in earnest. The greater part of our force will consist of militia. Therefore, there is some reason to apprehend trouble. 1st Regiment, John Willis. Major John Willis.
General Harmar plans to march his force north from Fort Washington, along 150 miles of mostly forest trails, to destroy the Miami settlement at Keyonke.
Dang, so they got a mission.
He'll be supported by another mixed force of regulars and militia, 330 men commanded by Major Hamtramck, marching from Vincennes. On October 7th, 1790, Harmar sets out on the United States' first major military operation since independence. After an 8-day march, his force reaches the Miami village at Keyonke, only to find it torched and abandoned.
Scorched earth, they knew they were coming.
The Miami have destroyed their own homes and apparently vanished. But Harmar's troops are being watched. Hundreds of warriors of the Northwest Confederacy have assembled to resist the U.S. attack. They are led by Miami War Chief Mishkinaqua, aka Little Turtle, Shawnee Chief Waiapir-Senwa, aka Blue Jacket, and Bakangahelas of the Lenape. They and their warriors are determined, well-armed, and know every inch of their homeland.
How do you fight that? You can't fight a ghost. It's a ghost that you're fighting in that forest.
Meanwhile, 150 miles southwest, Hamtramck's militia have mutinied, refusing to advance further into the forests.
Dang. You are not set up for success, are you, Harmar?
And he has to turn back. General Harmar is on his own. His force spends 4 days burning villages in the area,
Wow.
and destroying any food stores they can discover. Then, on October 19th, one of his companies is lured into an ambush. Attacked by more than 100 warriors, 150 militiamen turn and run. A single platoon of regulars stand their ground and are massacred.
Wow.
Around 30 U.S. soldiers are killed, with another 40 militia missing. 2 days later, Harmar decides his mission is complete and sets off for Fort Washington.
Oh no. He's gonna get ran out of there.
Hours later, his scouts report that villagers are returning to Kikayonge. Hoping to finally engage and defeat the enemy, Harmar's troops make a dawn attack. They expect to have the element of surprise.
How do you have an element of surprise in this situation?
But once more, they stumble into an ambush.
Wow.
In confused fighting, more than 100 U.S. soldiers are killed, scalped, and left where they've fallen.
Jeez.
Today, many mistakenly believe scalping to have been an exclusively Native American practice. In fact, for more than a century, it had been widely taken up by European settlers, often with encouragement from colonial authorities who paid bounties for native scalps as proof of death. What had begun as a ritual practice among certain tribes had become far more widespread and was now routinely carried out by both sides in the frontier wars.
It's insane. Disturbing and insane at the same time.
Harmar returns with his shaken force to Fort Washington.
Can't believe he survived.
Where he claims success. He has, after all, destroyed 5 Miami villages and considerable grain stores. It is a heavy blow to the tribes and will mean great hardship that winter.
Yeah, you didn't succeed, buddy.
But others saw it differently. The expedition has gone down in history as Harmar's defeat. And at the time, it was the largest U.S. defeat by Native Americans. Harmar is later exonerated by a court-martial, but his reputation never recovers.
Whew. Interesting stuff happening. Our prospects are much changed. Instead of peace and friendship with our Indian neighbors, a horrid savage war stares at us in the face. The Indians, instead of being humbled, appear determined on a general war. Rufus Putnam, Ohio Company.
That winter, both sides continue their raids across the Northwest Territory. In January 1791, at Big Bottom, Lenape and Wyandot warriors kill 12 settlers, including 2 children. Such attacks spread alarm across the territory and threaten the entire U.S. project of settlement, upon which powerful interests now depend.
Yeah, you're gonna have people scared to move out there now.
Settlers fear to travel west. Land speculators are up in arms. President Washington now turns to the governor of the Northwest Territory, 54-year-old Scottish-born Arthur Sinclair. Sinclair had plenty of military experience. Like Washington, he'd served as a British officer in the French and Indian War. And in '59, he'd stormed the heights of Quebec with General Wolfe. During the Revolutionary War, he joined the Continental Army and was with Washington when he crossed the Delaware.
Wow, That's interesting. Now, there were several boats, but still.
But his record was tarnished in 1777 by his decision to abandon Fort Ticonderoga to the British without a fight. Sinclair now suffers from severe gout, but this does not dissuade President Washington from giving him the rank of Major General and orders to launch a second expedition against the Northwestern Confederacy.
All right, how are we going to do it differently this time?
This time, the tribes must be taught a severe and unequivocal lesson.
Oh.
Comply with U.S. demands or face annihilation.
Oh.
Congress authorizes the raising of a second regular infantry regiment for the expedition. However, the prospect of frontier service is so unenticing that it proves impossible to recruit enough men to fill its ranks.
Wow.
Sinclair's force will number not the 3,000 or 4,000 men originally envisaged, but around 2,000. These include 500 regular infantry from the 1st and 2nd Regiment, 100 mounted dragoons, and 10 3-pounder and 6-pounder cannon.
Wow.
The 1st and 2nd Levy regiments provide 800 short-service volunteers, though almost all of these are raw recruits. Of the militia, Captain Faulkner's Pennsylvanian riflemen are experienced frontier fighters, but there's only 60 of them, while most of the 400 Kentucky militia are completely inexperienced.
So, meat grinder time. Basically.
The Northwestern Confederacy knows that their victory over General Harmar will not go unanswered, and they too prepare for another U.S. attack. For the tribes, it is a daunting prospect, a battle for survival in which they know their families, villages, and livelihoods will be targeted indiscriminately. But the common threat brings together warriors from a dozen tribes.
Oh, I love how they also have like a contrast. So you don't just look at like the American military hierarchy. We're looking at Little Turtle, Blue Jacket, and Bakangahalis. I just butchered that, but that's fine. So we got from the nations Lenape, Shawnee, Wyandotte, Ojibwe, Ottawa, Miami, Potawatomi, Mingo, and Cherokee even. Wow.
About 1,400 in all, making it one of the largest Native American armies ever assembled on the frontier.
Wow.
Miami War Chief Little Turtle will again play a leading role, alongside Blue Jacket and Bakangahalas.
Bakangahalas.
War chiefs organize the warriors according to tribe and language, and they are well armed. Many carry Brown Bess muskets.
I guess the French gave them that, since that was the French and Indian War.
Supplied by the British at Fort Detroit.
Oh, never mind. Proxy?
For close combat, they carry clubs, tomahawks, and knives. Many warriors will paint their face before battle.
War paint.
A ritual preparation for combat that also serves to terrify the enemy.
I think it works. Wow. We're about to get the battle. Should you foolishly persist in your warfare, the sons of war will let loose against you, and the hatchet will never be buried until your country is desolated, and your people humbled to the dust. Brigadier General Charles Scott. Interesting. Well, let's see what happens.
Summer 1791. Sinclair's orders are to leave Fort Washington no later than July 10th and return to the Miami villages at Kikayonge. President Washington particularly warns him to be alert for ambushes on the march. Once Sinclair has eliminated all resistance at Kikayange, he is to build a fort and garrison it with 1,200 men.
That's a message.
This stronghold will allow the U.S. to assert its control of the area and counter British influence from Fort Detroit. The British are supposed to have evacuated this outpost following the Revolutionary War, but they have not done so, and now use it as a base to encourage and support Native American resistance to the U.S.
Proxy war.
Sinclair's expedition, however, is in trouble before it can even set off.
Weather?
The U.S. Army's supply system relies on private contractors, most of whom are brazenly corrupt. They have pocketed most of the funds intended for the expedition, meaning Sinclair is seriously short of food, ammunition, and equipment.
Sounds like St. Clair kind of mismanaged everything.
Precious weeks are lost as he urgently seeks to secure proper supplies for his troops, while rush training the many raw recruits in his force. Meanwhile, 2 preparatory attacks are launched against the Native Americans. In May, Brigadier General Charles Scott leads a mounted militia raid that burns several villages and takes 41 hostages to be used in future negotiations. 2 months later, Lieutenant Wilkinson leads a second raid that burns more villages and crops. They take 34 hostages, including the daughter of Miami War Chief Little Turtle.
Oh, y'all did it. Oh, good luck.
The raids are supposed to distract the tribes, to keep them off balance ahead of the main attack. All they really achieve is to enrage and unite the Northwestern Confederacy like never before. And when Sinclair's army is finally ready to march north that autumn, they will be ready and waiting. Back in the 18th century, as violence flared across America's Northwest Territory, it's fair to say the news reporting was not exactly balanced or objective.
Is this an ad? Wait, is that the end of the video? Is that like... No. I guess that's it. I'm gonna see if there's another one and there'll be a different video for us, but wow. All right, that's it. Yeah, I mean, not a lot to say besides, wow, this was, you know, a disputed territory used as a proxy by the British supplying arms. A lot of these individuals, think about it, like these tribes have lived here. There's always like this debate, right, between manifest destiny and humanitarian crisis. It's very hard. It's very hard to traverse because no land has ever been non-conquered. Like you look at any land in the world, there has been despair, struggle, death, conquest, every single place, every single which way. It's hard to judge. It's hard to police. You know, and this was the age of colonialism. This is the age of expansion. This is not, I think the British would have done this without American independence. I mean, I don't think, I know this would happen. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of individuals didn't get to assimilate because that would be the best opportunity for them to assimilate. Instead, they were wiped out just because of unimaginable, just horrible things. Hard to pinpoint right or wrong because it went both ways. But you know, you have the Americans being the invaders in this case. So it just sucks. It sucks. We can learn from it. We can try to do better. That's all we can do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave some video recommendations down below. I read every comment. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Peace out. Bye-bye.